Hi, everyone. I'm Len May. I am the CEO and co-founder of Endocanna Health. We're a biotech company that actually uses your own DNA to help you with your own experience with phytocannabinoids. We look at the endocannabinoid system and help guide you to an experience that will help avoid some possible adverse events so you can have a more optimal experience in your overall phytocannabinoid use. But before I even get started, I want to talk about this mystery of DNA. And I want to talk about DNA in a way that somebody who's not a PhD can understand, somebody like me, a sciencey guy. So I'm going to try to explain it in a way where we can kind of relate to. So it's sort of my version of DNA 101. And the first thing that I want to establish with everyone is that we are 99.9% identical. All those things about we're so different, 99.9%, but it's that 0.1% that truly makes us unique and truly makes us different. And that is found in our DNA. And our DNA is found in every single cell in our body. And what does that really mean? Well, what it means is that we have these genes, and there's, there are two chromosome parts of 23. There's 23 different chromosomes in two pairs, so that would be 46 total. Within our bodies, there's hundreds of thousands of genes, and there are segments of DNA. So each one of these genes contains protein material that becomes the building blocks for everything that we have in our bodies. So our predispositions to lots of different things, and our hair, our organs, everything else, and we inherit them from our parents. So we get two copies from our mothers and fathers. And the way that this communication happens is the instructions are actually in these nucleotides. And these nucleotides, the way I like to explain that is our computers speak in a binary code of ones and zeros. And then what we have is we have a user interface that sits on top of that, but underneath that is ones and zeros. So our DNA speaks to us in a four-letter code, a C, a T, an A, and a G. And you can see on the screen what those letters stand for. The combination of those letters make us who we are. That's called your genotype. Next is the polymorphism, and this is where the unique 0.1% happens. So each DNA has a little bit of a different sequence. And when you have those variations in it, that is called a allele. So each variant has two different possibilities to kind of mutate or be slightly different, which is called that polymorphism. So I want to explain this in a way that everybody can understand. So we have genes that are encoded that are kind of fixed. So like our eye colors, the height that we're going to be, our skin color, male pattern baldness like I have. But there's other genes that we're encoded for that we actually have the power within ourselves to be able to modify the expression of, which is called epigenetics. So think about it this way. Genetics are your predispositions. So that would be your roadmap. That would be your GPS. And actually, hitting that pothole along the way, that's your epigenetic. That is the expression of that. So through your mindset, through your the nutrients that you consume in your body, and actually phytocannabinoids, they can all control the expression of those genes. So just because you have a predisposition, it doesn't mean you're locked into that. So I want to talk about these different findings that we have. So just to kind of preface, and I'll explain what we do in more detail, but these are different studies and different observations that we've had throughout the many years of Endocanna Health, so we can show everyone the effect of stress and how stress works within your body. So we have a gene called FOB. That gene actually degrades anandamide. So just in the general sense, anandamide is an endogenous endocannabinoid that is produced as part of our endocannabinoid system. And that gene creates an enzyme that breaks down anandamide. So anandamide is our bliss hormone. The word anan means bliss. So this is our bliss hormone, and usually it's released from many different things, but it's released specifically in this example to be able to alleviate stress when we have a stress response. So I'm going to explain it this way, that if we have a stressful event, there's a bunch of different chemicals that are blasted into our bloodstream. We have adrenaline, we have dopamine, we have cortisol, etc. When our bodies actually realize that there is no lion chasing us in the jungle, they start releasing endogenous chemicals. One of them happens to be anandamide. So the goal is to bring you back to homeostasis and balance. However, nearly 53% of the population share a genotype that actually shows more Fa than the average population. So the more FAAH that you have, the less anandamide that you have because it breaks it down. So you are much more prone to long-term stress. And if that happens, then people experience that stress on the basis. Also, it increases cortisol, which then can be associated with higher pH levels and inflammation and pain. So how do you alleviate that? Well, I mean, we've found through our studies that there is a way to be able to consume a better cannabinoid terpene profile, which I will get into, that is much more effective for people that have this genetic predisposition. I also want to talk about metabolism. So this is really, really interesting because a lot of people, when we consume cannabis, especially CBD and THC, our liver has different enzymes that convert those cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids. So THC, it's converted to 11-oxyhydroxide, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, and then there are genes they're called pharmacokinetic genes, cytochrome P450. I know it's really sciencey, but I'll make sure that I address it in a way that everybody can understand. So the idea is that everybody metabolizes different things differently, foods, etc. And we can genetically predispose and show people if they are a poor metabolizer. If that's the case, maybe they should not consume something to their first pass, or modify their dosing specifically based on what type of metabolizer. Some people are ultra rapid metabolizers and they don't need it as much. They're really creating, what I refer to as expensive urine for themselves because they metabolize and it excretes really quickly. So to show you how that works in your body, well, the gene that we're looking at is the CYP2C9, which actually metabolizes THC. And you can see that over 10% of the population share this genotype as a predisposition, and over 50% share the Fa gene. So we have these inside of us that we're actually walking around with, and we can see on that really hard to read graph that there are certain groups that we're looking at with certain genetic predispositions that do better with different types of cannabinoid and terpene profiles than other groups. And that's the thing that I wanted to emphasize as well. And I'll go into a little more detail on that shortly. Depressive feelings. Well, I mean, we're in an interesting time right now. So there's a lot of genetic triggers that are happening to people with these predispositions. Once again, genotype is your predisposition. It's your navigation system, and the expression of that is actually the epigenetics. So that's what really happens. So in data, we found that this depression or depressive feelings is higher in people that have an expression in CNR1 and CNR2, which are really associated with, once again, the amygdala part of your brain, and the forebrain is really interesting because it releases these chemicals to be able to control stress and feelings, etc. And there are certain genotypes which are associated with those depressive feelings, and the action that we take, including consuming different types of phytocannabinoids, can actually trigger that expression. So phytocannabinoids and terpenes, which I'll get into in a minute. But just to show you that nearly 40% of the population shares this specific genotype on CNR2. This is the RSID, which shows you the location of chromosome, and this is the allele combination, that genotype that I talked about. CC means homozygous, so you have the same exact allele combination on both. Now, if you look at this, that people have reported that being triggered with depressive feelings, the association of higher THC with a primary terpene profile called myrcene, which is found in what we would consider more indica dominant chemovars that are associated with that sedative state. So just something to kind of correlate to your own consumption. The next is insomnia. And by the way, insomnia is caused by so many different factors. Those stress and emotional factors are big factors associated with insomnia as well. But there are specific genes and a handful of them that we were able to identify that have a direct correlation to insomnia and sleeplessness, like MEIS1 as an example. So just to give you an overview of that, there are nearly 34% of general population that share this genotype. And what happens is when people are consuming higher THC formulations and including terpene profiles that are dopamine boosting terpene profiles like limonene and pinene, which are found mostly as dominant terpene profiles in what we would refer to as sativa dominant hybrids, those in an exacerbated way can trigger that expression of insomnia. So think about it this way as an analogy. I use alcohol as an example. I'm not a drinker, but just to so you can understand. If somebody consumes a lot of alcohol, then they can pass out, for instance. So and they can sleep and be in that state for 10, 12 hours. When they wake up, they don't feel rested. And the reason why is, among many different reasons, because your body's trying to excrete the poison of alcohol. But one of the reasons is because you're not getting that restful sleep. So you're getting that 10, 12 hours, but there's activity in your brain. So you're in alpha. You're not hitting that theta, the REM sleep, the really restful sleep. And what happens with people who consume high amounts of THC that have this predisposition with that terpene profile, that's the activation of their brain in the forefront of their brain is happening while they sleep. So they're never getting that restful sleep. So how do you know all these things, and what can you do to be able to mitigate the expression of these genes? Well, I'm going to dive in a little bit into more of what we do specifically and to kind of give you an example. But before I do that, I want to show you that this is the information that we've been able to learn and gather so far. And what this chart shows is these are the genetic predispositions that people actually consume cannabis for, of phytocannabinoids. And this is the amount of the population that has these genetic predispositions that can be triggered by phytocannabinoids. So think about it this way, over 50% of the general population have predispositions to stress, then the impulsivity, also opioid dependence. Over 60% of the people have a genetic predisposition. So think about it. Healthcare professionals, if you have somebody that you can show upfront that they have a predisposition to opioid dependence, maybe avoid, prescribing opioids and suggest a cannabinoid formulation instead, phytocannabinoids. Understanding your specific genetic predisposition and where you fall in can help guide the experience. And can avoid this negative adverse event like a psychosis, a psychotic-like effect, which is somewhere around 50% of the general population has. So understanding that and guiding you into that experience, that's really, really important. So is there a way? And there is a way, and we want to work with healthcare practitioners and also general population. There is a way. We've launched our company in 2017 with thousands of people that have taken a DNA test, and I'll show you how it sort of works so you can look to see what you can do to the overall goal is to personalize your overall experience. And that's the goal with everything that we do, because everything is personal, including cannabis, and consuming what it is that's more geared as precision therapeutics for yourself is the way of the future. So how does it work is we have a DNA test and we have a full HIPAA compliant portal called My DNA Live. So My DNA Live allows us to use our test, and we have a test called EndoDNA, which you would swab the inside your mouth. You would register that test because it's fully HIPAA compliant, fully anonymized, and you would ship it to our lab. We'll genetically sequence that, and then we'll send you an email that your report is ready. When you log into your secure portal, you'll see this first. So we'll show you color-coded whether you have genetic predispositions to those symptomatic conditions, and then it'll guide you through the process. So it's color-coded. Green means there's no genetic predisposition, so there's no real risk associated with genotyping. Yellow means there's a variant. There's one, so there's a slight risk. And then red means there's multiple variants detected, so it's an exponentially higher risk. It also looks at drug-to-drug interaction. So if somebody's taking prescription medication, looking to see what prescription medication they're consuming, there's a full database. And if you need to modify, because some cannabinoids can actually inhibit the efficacy of your prescription medication, some can accelerate or exacerbate that. So understanding that and how to consume correctly. And then there's a survey that allows us to look at a baseline and a feedback loop mechanism, so we actually understand better through deep learning on what other suggestions we can make for people based on their genotypes. The next is what your report looks like. So this is really, really important because every single thing in our reports has a peer-reviewed reference. We compare that to others, and that's multiple categories. The peer-reviewed reference is that blue hyperlink underneath the report. So this one says that John is more prone to depressive feelings. This is the name of the study. There's a hyperlink to a PubMed study. You can also see how you can compare yourself to other genealogy or other genetic groups. So if your ancestry is from Southeast Asia versus Eastern versus Europe, you can see how that genotype is compared on the screen. That's the oval that's on the bottom right underneath the hyperlink. So the idea is that this is you have lifelong updates because we're involved in studies. There's many of you and other people who are involved in studies. So as studies become available, our artificial intelligence pulls that in. We have a science team or group, an advisory group, which I'll share with you, that we make a determination which studies actually go into our research and what we point to. So as new studies become available, especially minor cannabinoid studies, they will be included in this as well. The next is ratio suggestions. So what people want to know is they want to know what they should consume, how much they should consume, and where do you get it? And those are the answers. Those are the questions that we're answering with what we do. So the one thing is we talk about the ratio of cannabinoids, CBD and THC. So when somebody answers their survey, we can see what they're feeling in the moment and home in a suggestion much more closer to what it is. So if somebody has never taken THC, and like somebody like my mom, she can start with a 20-to-1 ratio and titrate her way down, or answer the survey questions, so we'll have a better understanding of her specific experience with THC. The other thing is terpene profiles, which is the secret sauce of these formulations. To find the right primary and secondary terpene, tertiary, guide somebody's experience. And once again, everything here has a peer-reviewed reference that you can see in blue underneath that. So it's really, really important to understand. That's the ratio that's more specific to you based on a symptomatic condition. The next is your personalized wellness plan. So your personalized wellness plan is condition specific. And what I mean about condition specific, it looks at all the symptomatic conditions that you have an elevated risk for. Then it combines your answers to your survey questions and shows you your own personalized suggestion formulation that is geared to you based on the symptomatic condition that you're trying to address in the moment. So when you look at this, here's a question that may be asked. Okay, well, can you just give me one single formulation? Give me one thing that's going to address all my needs. And the answer is there's no such thing in therapeutics or medicine. Now, one, it depends what it is you're trying to address in the moment. So if you have a predisposition to insomnia, we will share that with you. However, if you're not experiencing insomnia, that's something that is good to know about yourself, and maybe you can do something about it when that expresses itself, which is called epigenetics. However, in the moment, you're trying to address, inflammation or stress. So that will be the first information that's provided to you in your personalized wellness plan. The other thing that you can use the personalized wellness plan is to see what it is that you're experiencing in different times of the day. So an analogy could be sort of your NyQuil and your DayQuil type of formulation. So maybe you have a daytime formulation that is more associated with the lack of focus that you're experiencing, and that's your formulation to address that specific need. And then you have a nighttime formulation that's helping you to unwind and get more relaxed and even help with some of the insomnia markers. So NyQuil and DayQuil, hopefully you don't take your NyQuil during the day and you should be fine. So this is enough information for you to be able to go to a dispensary, a healthcare professional, depending where you reside in the world. In Canada, you can go to the the country's website and get those formulations delivered. You just have to look to see what the ratio of cannabinoids and terpenes are, and then find that matching formulation, which is good. However, we step further. And what we do is we use another one of our patent algorithms to be able to guide people into what we call an endoline formulation. So the reason why we do this is we look at certificates of analysis from all kinds of different companies for their products. And what we do is we run that through an algorithm that is associated with your suggested ratio, and we can show you how closely that product matches your suggested ratio. And if it's a product that's 0.3% THC or less, in the US at least, you can go to their website and get the product shipped to you. However, if the product is 0.3% THC or more, you would go to the manufacturer's website, put in your zip code, and it'll show you the dispensary or wherever the outlet is that's geofenced closest to you, so you can find a product that's closest matching to you, to your genetic predispositions, that's located within a distance that's closest to you as well. So basically, the idea is to be able to start with your genetics, your genotype, all the way through to a suggested product that is a matching endoline product that gives us a feedback loop for the users of these products that we learn from, and we're able to make better suggestions for individuals. So truly, what we call endocompatibility. And just to summarize what I was saying is, the idea is provide the most ideal ratio for specific genotypes, uncover also the method of delivery. So your modality, being a poor metabolizer, maybe avoid your first pass. So having a method of consumption is also really, really effective, and also dosing based on your metabolic function. Which terpenes and cannabinoids are best suited for you and what you may want to avoid. And then also we talk about specific products. And the last thing that's not on the slide that I also mentioned, but I want to emphasize that, drug-to-drug interaction. It's really, really important. And just to give you an example, there's one example we just recently had with a consumer, with somebody who works with our product. They have a diagnosis where their doctor suggested or recommended they use cannabis. So this person went and to a dispensary. This is a woman who's around 80 years old, and she was told to take gummies by the person working at a dispensary. So I think there were 10 milligram gummies. She ate one, didn't feel anything, waited, still didn't feel anything, took another, didn't feel anything, and she proceeded to, consume a larger dose of these gummies without any effect. So when she went into her profile and uploaded her prescription medication, there was a specific prescription medication that was an inducer of that THC was an inducer of that cannabinoid, THC. So basically, what was happening was that she had to take 400 times the suggested dose of THC in order for her to have that experience, to actually feel that, which is a ridiculous amount. So if she would have known this up front, maybe she can stagger her medication, etc. But this would be able to guide somebody in their experience with their prescription medication and also other medications that they want to consume. The idea overall is to have an observational study. So what we're doing on an ongoing basis is learning. So we're always learning the efficacy of different products and how they work with specific individuals. How do we do that? We are committed to research. So right now we have 3 institutional review board clinical studies that are underway. We just finished our 3rd one right now. We have 3 more underway, which is for a specific condition. The interesting findings in the study are that we found in our cohort I think somewhere around 70% of the cohort had a genotype pattern, a genetic pattern that was specific to our cohort, not the controls, that are found in, like I said, close to 70% of our cohort that are found in 0.2% of the general population, which is, we'll be publishing on that soon. But basically, this is the way that it sort of works, is we're looking at unique patterns, why people are experiencing certain things that they experience. Some people have these perfect storms. One more example is we had a person that was a poor metabolizer that was, so CYP2C9, poor metabolizer, consumed an edible. That edible also triggered more of a stress reactivity gene, which is associated with CNR1 and FA, including PTSD. So not only were they stressed in the moment, they were also experiencing that stress that they may have had, a year or 2 ago that was replaying in their brain. Then there's a 3rd gene that was triggered, which is AKT1. The expression of that was triggered, and they had a psychotic episode. And this is rare, and I don't want to scare anybody into, cannabis is extremely safe comparatively to any other substance, plant medicines, plant therapeutics. However, there are certain people that taking something that's incorrect for them, for their genotype, can actually have a negative expression. So this is something that's really, really important for you to understand. The other thing is that we use technology. Well, at the end of the day, we are a technology company, biotech company. So we're heavily invested in deep learning. And the way that we do this is through a collaborative effort with our customers. And this feedback loop is really, really important because the data is fully anonymized. So we are getting data, so everybody knows on record, but the data is not Len May's personal information. That information is encrypted and anonymized, and we're HIPAA compliant. It's having 1,000 people that have a similar genotype, that have consumed a similar formulation in a similar modality and had an effect that was positive or that was negative. So we're documenting that, and we're looking at those so we can learn much more. The other thing that we talked about is studies. So as we include more of our studies, as you out there, the researchers, the healthcare professionals, anybody that's involved in studies, we welcome those. Please continue to do those, because what we do is we use technology, pull those studies in, and be able to guide somebody into their personal experience with those studies. So now that we do that, the technology doesn't make the ultimate decision, but we have a board. So our science board includes Dr. Ethan Russo, Dr. Chris Spooner, Dr. Mike Tagan, and that guy at the end who's just carries their lunch for them, basically. But we make a decision when we pull studies in. We make a decision which studies should be included or not. So that if there's a study of 10 men between the ages of 35 to 40 in a certain country that had an experience, that study will probably not be included in our findings. So at the end of the day, I wanted to thank everybody here for listening to my rants. I just want to summarize in this way. Cannabis is personal. Everything is personal to your body. Your DNA is the blueprint. It shows you the things that you may want to avoid and things that you want to consume more of, including not just cannabis, but we look at the endocannabinoid system. So we look at nutrients, things that may affect your endocannabinoid system. We look at vitamin deficiencies, things that may affect your endocannabinoid system. And then phytocannabinoids, look in your endogenous endocannabinoids where you may have some deficiencies. So at the end of the day, you can find what's right for you and have a much more optimal experience. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody's time.